All right, the Fremont crew is back with you. This is going to be an all-time show, folks, because we are back in our holding area, the holding pen. Hopefully, no K-State coaches or players are going to come through here as we're doing this, but no guarantees because that's theoretically what this area is here for. So we're going to sneak in a show. We're going to sneak in a live show. K-State season ostensibly is over. I guess maybe they could be playing in Vegas. We shall see. For the most part, it's over. We're going to wrap up what happened. It's not a good one tonight against Baylor. It's coming up next. Okay, it is another edition of Three Mod. John Kurtz, Derek Young, Cole Manbeck, all here with you, squeezed into the frame, making the most of what we have. If anybody ever doubted our dedication to this show, what we have done the last 2 days to bring this to you is great. And I'm even going to have to pass a mic around today, people. So, we're giving you all the extra effort that we've got. And that means after we are done, everybody should probably get some Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon as a reward. You should get it, too, for your watch parties, whether it's going to be watching this team play in the tournament in Vegas, or it's going to be Pete Hughes and the Batcats, or if you're gearing up for a watch party of the Iowa State game in Ireland. Make sure you have Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon on hand, or 360 Vodka. They've got you hooked up either way. So thanks to our good friends at Holiday Distillery. K-State goes down. This was not a fun game at all. 70-56, your final today, losing to Baylor. Bears limped to the finish line a little bit, but jumped out about midway through the first half, and there was just never a whole lot there. It seemed like K-State was pretty lethargic, didn't have the legs, didn't have the energy, had a lot of trouble staying in front of Baylor, guarding them tonight. And I don't know, to be honest, Cole, it felt a lot like yesterday. It was just they played full strength, full-ish strength Baylor instead of, half strength, half-mast Arizona State like last night.
Yeah, which is a little bit frustrating and kind of an enigma because they looked like they were completely gassed and exhausted from the start of this game tonight. And I got to be honest, I can't see an excuse there. It's the second game in 2 days. You can't be gassed yet. Colorado didn't look gassed today, and they're the last place team in this league. NC State didn't look gassed, and they played 5 games in 5 days last year and won the ACC tournament. So you got to be ready to play, and you got to have the legs. I mean, you're supposed to have – coming into the season, they were supposed to have a deep bench, and obviously that didn't come to fruition. And I totally understand Coleman Hawkins is playing on one leg out there, so I get that perspective. But, to look as lethargic and tired as they did defensively – I mean, DY, you summarized it after the game and in your article during the game. I mean, it was a layup line and a dunk contest for Baylor for much of that game. The defense was an outright disaster.
Couldn't stay in front of anyone. Every Kansas State offensive possession seemed like a chore. Not a chore,
yeah.
But a chore. And for the most part, and there were some times I think when the defense kind of woke up a little bit in the second half, but I wrote about it, and Cole's right. He saw my article. He was next to me as I was composing it, but it was a layup line. It was a dunk contest, and it was 2 teams playing at 2 way different speeds. I don't know if it was even like Kansas State didn't have the effort or didn't play hard, but they were a lot slower. And it was very noticeable for almost the entire 40 minutes.
Well, it was very noticeable, in the beginning of the game. I mean, the only thing that was slowing Baylor down early was that they missed a couple of layups. I mean, they had 3 or 4 layups that didn't go in. And once they got that figured out, they just took off. You're right. It was a game where just from looked like athleticism standpoint out on the floor, it was pretty apparent early on that K-State was going to be playing in an uphill battle.
It kind of provoked a conversation between Cole and I during the game. It's because we kind of talked about what might happen in the offseason and what you might do to build this roster and manage it going forward in terms of who stays, who goes, who you chase. But there's a point now where we kind of reflected on it a little bit, Cole. It's do they need to get more athletic in the backcourt? Because that was kind of alarming for this game, at least.
I don't think there's any question they need to get more athletic in the backcourt. I mean, they need more on the offensive end, more shot creators, guys that can blow by. Hope you guys are appreciating the music we got going here. They need more guys that can create shots aside from Doug McDaniel and break a defense down. What is that, KU or something?
That
UCF
might be
going to take the
UCF,
court,
I
carrying the stereo system, giving you guys some live action here from UCF.
I'm on it. You know what? I'm on it. Cole, hold the mic. I'll get us a live report.
Okay. Well, the music just
stopped.
The music literally just stopped. John's going to run out with the UCF basketball team. We hear the KU fight
He
song.
might play point guard for him tonight.
We sure it might have been KU. It was because the fight song's playing right now for KU.
Sucks.
Yeah. So
Can't confirm.
what was that song?
Sources tell me the Kansas Jayhawks are on the floor. They will take part in this game against UCF. Nick, our KU guy, who's our producer, you're welcome for this reporting on the Jayhawks here at the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City.
Here, the thing is, like, when you watch this game, like the talent disparity between these two teams, and keep in mind Baylor's the 7 seed and you're the 10 seed, and Baylor's a 19 and 13 team now, but the talent disparity was quite evident.
I don't even know talent. It was more like speed.
Well, yeah, they're
Quickness.
just quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they were blowing by. Like, their guards look like what K-State's guards should look like for what they spent on the roster.
They blew by K-State almost every possession.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and look, when they played in Waco, VJ Edgecombe did that, but I don't know that the rest of the roster really did. It was just an VJ Edgecombe show.
And tonight, VJ Edgecombe did it tonight too, but tonight I think it was more Jaden Nunn.
Yeah, Jaden Nunn killed him. I mean, what did he end up with here? He had
a lot of threes too.
He had 18 points, 4 of 6 from 3, 7 of 10 from the floor. Edgecombe 7 of 15 from the floor, 19 points, 10 rebounds for Edgecombe.
Yeah, and not to single out Max Jones, but I think he was on Nunn a lot and just had no chance.
Yeah, and Brendan Hassan plays less than 20 minutes tonight.
Yeah,
CJ is under 18. Yeah, Hassan struggled to start the second half defensively, especially. David Gasson was great for K-State, 20 and 10 and 8 and 9 from the floor. Coleman Hawkins didn't score his first points till 6 minutes left in the game, which, again, I'm not faulting Coleman Hawkins. He's playing on one legs back-to-back days. So,
and the quickness and athleticism just shows up on defense. Like you can be crafty and you don't have to be super athletic or, super explosive or quick to go out there and play some offense and score some points. I mean, some of the best players in the NBA are the lesser athletic ones, whether it be Nikola Jokic or Luka Doncic. But then on defense, you're kind of a black hole.
Yeah. So I think they got to get a lot more athletic and quicker. I mean, you look at the guards and Jerome Tang talks about wanting to bring a lot of these guys back, right? Well, Brandon Hassan and Max Jones aren't the burner, explosive, twitchy type athletes. And yeah, I'm completely fine with both of them coming back, but you got to get some other pieces to go along with Doug that can create and that can stay in front of guys. So
Doug has to make shots.
Yeah, Doug's got to become more efficient. I mean,
what was Doug's line?
He's 6 of 17. It's
like the same thing. It's like the same. He has the same stat line every night.
He makes between 4 and 6, but it seems like he has 17 attempts every night, and he's only making 4 or 5 or 6.
He was 1 of 6 from 3, and he had 14 points. He had 7 rebounds. I mean, he made some nice rebounds, and he had 5 assists, 4 turnovers. But he had some frustrating turnovers again tonight. Yeah, we've talked about it ad nauseum. He's got to be a more efficient player.
It makes sense to bring him back because you don't want to roll the dice because it's easy to do worse than Doug McDaniel.
We just talked about to be quicker.
But
he's their quickest.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense to bring him back, but he has to have a good offseason. The offseason is where you almost worry about him more.
That brings up a valuable point when you go back to, how that relationship started at the beginning of the year and what we perceive to be some of the issues there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to try and save this until a little bit later on. I want to make sure that we finish the discussion on this game before we get bigger picture. But guys, tonight felt a long ways away. As much as they flashed for that 6-game stretch, watching them the last 2 days, it just feels like they are a long ways away from being what we want this team to be. And now I say that realizing Missouri went over last year in the SEC, and you can turn it around fast, and we'll talk about all that. But it was not encouraging. There was not much that was encouraging about this. I think we should probably spend the majority of this on bigger picture stuff. But any final thoughts from you guys before we take a break, just on this game alone?
Baylor didn't even shoot the ball well, so
Well, they did the first half. I mean, they averaged, 1.37 points per possession in the first half. And
it was like 1.41.
Yeah,
but some of that was second chance points. I mean, they didn't really shoot.
The second half, they shot 38%. So they were 53% in the first and then 38% in the second. K-State went to 1-3-1 zone some in the second half. Baylor missed some shots. But BYU pointed it out at halftime. Baylor had outscored K-State, and they'd scored more points in the paint than K-State had total points at half. Yeah. It was 26 points in the paint for Baylor, in case it had 24 points offensively in the first half. They were just getting into the lane at will, like we talked about. And then guys, they reverted right back to being awful from three. So, I don't know if their legs are completely shot, but 3 of 25 from three. And last night they finished the game 3 of 13.
I was just going to say, what were they after 5 of 5?
So that's 6 of 38.
Yeah.
So, 3 of 25 in itself is bad enough. What does that come out to be?
They were
12%.
They were 5 of 39 in the 2 games before last night.
Well, they were 24% over 8 games heading into last night.
And I don't. We keep talking about the tired legs. Maybe that it is, but because it seems like it's got to be something. But why?
Well, let me suggest another thing. This is something else we talked a lot about. Baylor sure got a lot of wide open looks from three, and K-State doesn't get as many schemed open looks, and that's what we talked with this offense. Outside of when you had 2 pros and Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, I just don't know what you can really see and say that they scheme up a lot offensively.
K-State in the last 2 years has been bottom 4 in the Big 12 in Ken Palm offense, and they've been in the hundreds nationally 2 straight years in Ken Palm offense since Marquise and Keontae left. They talked about going to this 5-out approach to attract NBA type. Patrick Ngonga. I don't even know what I don't even know what it is that they're really running.
Well, they try to go through Coleman Hawkins some, and I think they're trying to do matchups, and sometimes they run ball screen stuff too. But I don't know. I agree. They don't scheme up enough open looks, but they do scheme up some, and they never go in anyway.
Some of it again.
Max Jones had that wide open corner 3. There is some in rhythm that just don't go down for this team. Doug McDaniel, his misses were open too.
Yeah, they had some open looks, but some of it gets back to, again, you got to have more creators. You have more creators that can just beat a guy off the bounce. Baylor was just beating K-State off the bounce. They swung the ball.
Yeah, I will say the guy that gets on our nerves a little bit is CJ, and he does beat people off the bounce, but he never finishes.
Yeah, they swung the ball, and then they can just beat K-State when they move the ball, and they were moving it quick. And
CJ Jones 1 of 6 from the field. He had 3 shots at the rim, and he was just attacking, and he missed all 3.
2 shots that didn't hit rim again tonight. He just struggled. They got to figure out who they want back.
They need creators. They need shot makers. You thought Brandon Haas was going to be a shot maker. That kind of went away in the Big 12 too.
Yeah, 1 of 5.
Haas wound up just being middle of the road ish, maybe slightly above middle of the road 3-point shooter in Big 12 play. So lots of problems, lots of issues. We'll try and solve it all, but we'll do it wearing home field apparel, because if you go to homefieldapparel.com, you can get all the best K-State gear around. Looks great. It's retro. Back in the days when everybody could shoot, they were big on the fundamentals back in 1977, like Cole's 1977 Big 8 champ shirt that he was wearing yesterday. You can find it at homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code 3mod24 for 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3mod24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. And we are back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Okay, so for those who are unaware, the Big 12 wants to send a couple of teams to a tournament in Vegas. It's outside of the NIT, a new kind of NIL-based thing on Fox. we'll see if K-State's going to wind up there or not. I'm not sure how all that's going to shake out. It doesn't take place until the same time as the Final Four, so it's a long ways away, and you can imagine that's a nightmare keeping a roster together. I'm going to treat this, for all intents and purposes, like this season is over. So with that being said, I don't think we can really shy away from this being the top storyline, which is brought to you by our friends at Alenco. Visit alencohome.com, ALENCO home.com, to get the hookup for all your home improvement needs. We appreciate their support as always. It's just zooming out and taking a big picture look at this season, man. This season, which had a lot of hype coming into it, a lot of money behind it, winds up sub 500, 16 and 17. You are 2 games under 500 in the Big 12. You're nowhere near the NCAA tournament at the end of it. We've got a 3-year trend line now of Elite 8 to NIT to probably nothing, or at least not even qualifying for the NIT because you don't have the over 500 record. So, like, how do we look at this? I mean, I do still think, had Naquan Tomlin played the entire season last year, they probably do make the tournament. And you could say, well, then this would just be first year of missing the tourney. If you want to be in the business of cutting him some slack, or are you on the other side, just like total disaster mode? I saw our good friend Jimmy Ricketts point out in the chat just a second ago, hey, it seems like players that come in are worse than their previous stops. Guys that leave are better when they leave. Where do you fall on like what exactly this season is now that it is, for all intents and purposes, over?
I mean, to be honest, I would say, like, I agree that if the Naquan Tomlin thing doesn't happen, maybe you probably make the NCAA tournament, or even if you don't have those distractions, you probably make the NCAA tournament. With that being said, like, I cut them slack because of that, but I don't view it as you did make the NCAA tournament. You still missed it for one reason or another, and you still missed it again for one reason or another. Sometimes that becomes a trend. So I don't think like you can ignore still what the end result was. So you missed it 2 times in a row. Next season becomes very, very critical in my eyes because of that. Is it Jerome Tang on a hot seat? I don't think so. I don't think it's really possible for that to be the case. But that doesn't still mean it can't be NCAA tournament or bust.
I think there are 2 different things there. Would it be him on the hot seat in terms of like his boss in the athletic department versus the fans? I think those are 2 very different conversations.
Yeah, but one matters, but technically doesn't matter.
I get it. Yeah.
So, I mean, the job security is going to be there regardless. But in the eyes of everyone that kind of matters, even the athletic department itself, like you can't really miss an NCAA tournament the 3rd year in a row. Even if you are able to survive that, doesn't make it okay. And especially if you think back to what Kansas State was right before Jerome Tang, which is why they had to hire him in the first place. They missed 3 then. So
5 or 6.
Yeah, next year, assuming the worst would be 6 or 7. That's just, then you get into a real big problem, I think, as a program, and what your expectations are, what the standards are, what people view you as, what you can attract. So I don't think that's a thing that you want to go down, quite frankly. But a lot of work still needs to be done between now and then to prevent that from being worst case scenario. I was just talking when you guys had the break there. Last night, the best player for Kansas State was who? Coleman Hawkins. Tonight, the best player for Kansas State was who? David Gasson. These guys are gone next year.
Yeah. I mean, the fan hot seat matters in a way because you lose fan support. It becomes a lot harder to win. You have negativity flooding. You don't have the fan support at games. It impacts your home environment. And then also the negative recruiting. I mean, Jerome Tang's going to be negatively recruited against because he missed the tournament 2 straight years. And there are going to be people that are like, it was a 1-year wonder. I mean, that's just going to be pointed out. And they're going to be like, do you really want to go to K-State? Like, especially in the revenue sharing era where teams are going to be able to offer maybe similar amounts. They're going to be like, well, you want to go K-State? You want to go somewhere else? You want to come play for me? So they're going to be negatively recruited against because of the last 2 years. And that will only increase if they go a 3rd year without making the NCAA tournament. Then you lose the fan base completely. So the pressure is on. We talked about it after the Iowa State game. They got to make the tournament next year. They got to get this offseason right. They got to figure out what they need to change from an evaluation purpose and just the entire offseason and what changes they need to make from a schematic standpoint, et cetera. They got to do an overhaul. And because this clearly didn't work. And I agree with you guys. Like, I think, the outlook is probably different if they had Naquan Tomlin last year, because I do think they make the tournament and then people are like, well, this is a 1-year wonder in terms of missing the tournament. But that didn't happen. They missed it last year. And so there's going to be a ton of pressure on Jerome.
And it was just, this year was so bad. I mean, I know the 6-game stretch was great, but man, I mean, you just look at this sub 500, like it just, and starting 7-10. I mean, it was a disaster
at this point. And I hate to say it, I don't think anything is a fluke, especially when you win 6 games in a row. But the 6-game winning streak is the outlier of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I will go back. I've seen this point made like on Jerome Tang and inheriting Marquise Noel. And I will just say, in defense of Jerome Tang and the staff, like Marquise Noel won 14 games under Bruce Weber. Okay, he went 14-17. Nobody was saying when Jerome Tang took the job that he inherited this massive pool of talent. He had Masood and Noel, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, how's he going to replace an 11 guys? And they did it. And they won 26 games, and they went to the Elite Eight. So clearly Jerome Tang deserves some credit. I love Marquise Noel. He deserves a ton of credit, too, for what he did. He was phenomenal. But Jerome Tang and the staff, they figured some things out, too. They pushed some right buttons. They've proven they can do it. But you got to prove it now in year 4 as you head in. And so they got to hit a home run in the offseason. They got to land multiple dudes. And, you know, I think we'll all just be kind of playing it a little more slow this offseason on who they land. And I'm not going to get over my heels on that until we see them play. Because we just don't know what it's going to look like.
Looking way far ahead into this too, is like the starts of seasons have come back to bite them a little bit, or how we often hear Jerome Tang say, "I want to play my best basketball in February and March." That sounds great, but you could also lose it in November and December. And with, I think, fan support not being flimsy right now, but being very.
It's DY. Let me stop you there. It's pretty apathetic. Like, shout out to, I love our Discord, patreon.com/3mod to join our Discord. But like, Cole, I looked at you at one point, like early in the game, like second media time out of the game. And I was like, dude, it's dead in here. Like nobody, the game threads are usually pretty lively. And by here at the end of the year, I mean, there were 5 or 6 people hanging out really actively, but there was not a whole lot going on there. You can just sense like everybody. And look, I'll admit, especially yesterday, I was just kind of like, man, I didn't have much in me to.
Yeah. Like, I'm wondering how much more you wanted to watch of this team. I get it. But like that, what you mentioned there, I think that's one of 2 things. One is like, I think you need to rejuvenate the fan base a little bit because they're starting to dip out a little bit on you or what their feelings about this program, but also because like you got buried a little bit, especially this non-conference. Like you have to have a good start and like, yeah, play your best basketball in February and March, but put the pedal down in November and December too, because that'll hurt you. And we'll see. I think they're probably going to get, from the sound of it, maybe have a tougher non-conference slate too, which I'll put it this way: it's if you're going to lose games, it is better to lose against good teams rather than bad teams, I guess, because they lost Wichita State and LSU, Nebraska. Like, come on.
What were there? I mean, 1,000 K-State fans here tonight, maybe.
Ooh.
Like, was there even
the
that?
weird thing? John was here last night. The weird thing was, I thought there was more fans.
It felt like there were more last night. Yeah, I don't know.
And look, I'm not gonna rail on K-State fans for not coming and watching this team.
This is not
but
fan shaming,
and to be fair, like, I mean, one of the frustrations for me from the Big 12 tournament perspective overall is K-State fans really haven't showed up in large numbers for a long time. And
because to defend the fans, because they haven't won multiple games here since 2013, the program sucks in Kansas City, and that is across multiple coaches. That's going back to, Frank Martin sucked in Kansas City. They had one run to the title game, which was nice, but outside of that, and it wasn't just KC, by the way. Back then, it was Oklahoma City. Yeah. But K-State has been awful. It is really frustrating as a guy like from Kansas City, and I love this tournament so much, and I come basically every year. It is very frustrating that this program is so bad here all the time,
and it is quite a bit of a bummer because it's such a fun tournament and you bow out so early every year.
Can I make a counterpoint though? I think if the fans showed up in larger numbers, this team might be a little bit better here. Create a home court advantage like Iowa State does. They lift their team up. K-State fans don't show up and pack this place. They're overtaken by Iowa State fans, and that's frustrating because this is a large footprint for Kansas State alumni base in Kansas City. And again, I'm not blaming the fans for K-State losing tonight or anything like that, but I would like to see a little bit more support in Kansas City at the Big 12 tournament.
I think the win's got to come first.
Well,
like that's what Iowa State. They didn't just start magically happening. Like the wins came first.
Well, the Keontae Marquise team, they didn't have a good crowd at the TCU game, and of course they laid an
because
egg.
the year before the wins didn't come. They haven't come since 2013.
Yeah. I mean, anyways, I don't want to distract from I only brought up the crowd because it felt apathetic tonight, in the arena and on our Discord, and so it just felt like a lot of people were ready for it to be over with. At this point, everybody knew they weren't making a run 5 games in 5 days. That's why we laughed last night about the 11 wins.
Cole, they only came up 10 short, man.
Yeah. And so
Cole, you were ready for the season to be over.
I was ready for the season to be over back in January, and then that 6-game winning streak hit, and I was like, man, this is fun.
Yeah.
And that just makes it all the more perplexing. How did they do that? I don't I'm trying to wrap my mind around how can you beat Iowa State by 19 and 8?
Because I was like, maybe it came against maybe a deceivingly lighter part of the schedule. No.
Yeah.
It's the tougher part of the schedule.
I know KU was struggling at that time, but you win at Ames by 19. You beat Arizona.
KU wasn't even in the middle of the ultimate struggle.
No, they hit it worse later.
That was later. They beat Arizona when they were hot.
So I don't know how to explain the struggles. I mean, you had Fran Fraschilla tweeting at one point that it was the best starting 5 aside from Houston in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And he's been calling games for 20 plus years.
He's
a
not
former
an idiot.
coach.
Yeah.
And so he saw talent, but then you watch tonight and you're like, they're not that talented. So it's conflicting. I don't know what to make of it. All I know is this season was a massive failure and disappointment, and they got to get it right this next offseason.
Do we look at conditioning at all?
Well, let's take a break here. Let's get some final thoughts in after the break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, TY, what was that thought?
Just if we were talking about tonight, they didn't look athletic, but they did in that 6-game winning streak, or maybe they weren't that much more athletic. I don't know. We need to do a post-mortem on that. is there a conditioning part that we need to think about?
Well, apparently they didn't take Shark Week very seriously, according to Doug and Coleman on the podcast. So I don't know.
I think we all really like Phil Byer.
Yeah,
I think he's a really good strength coach.
I think he's one of the more respected ones in the industry. So I failed.
He's got a ton of respect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I failed to think that's a culprit, or at least that he is a culprit. But I don't know if it's they didn't have the right buy-in at the right time. I don't know.
I think it's also depth, guys. They get to the end of the season. They look what Doug's been playing. They had to keep him on the court for 36 to 38 minutes every game for the last 2 months. Yeah, they can't take him off the court.
Right, but it's like you said, Colorado's, they played the second.
I know, but Colorado's deeper. Colorado plays 10 guys, and this team. I mean, look. David Castillo plays 232. Ugana plays 229. They didn't play in the second half. Neither one of those guys took the court in the second half. So, and then
Moby played 9.
Yeah.
So,
you got David Gasson at 37 and a half minutes. You got Coleman at almost 38 on one leg. You're having to play Coleman Hawkins 38 minutes on one leg back-to-back nights. Doug's over 38, and Max is almost 35. That's just a team that doesn't have depth that we thought was going to be deep. Ashore. We thought they had so much.
The NCAA tournament team have 4 guys with averaging 35 minutes or more.
Well, Marquise, Keontae, Naquan, Desi, it felt like they had Igiola was a decent, respectable big off the bench. You had David Gasson.
They had 4 guys averaging 34 or 35 minutes.
They probably did Tyke Green.
Barely played towards the end.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, Marquise obviously just put him on their back, and Keontae, they played a ton of minutes, but
yeah.
I don't know. That's just I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, but I am too, because we're talking about all that stuff, and I was like, man, that Elite 8 team had the same stuff, except Marquise Noel wasn't benched for the first 2 months like Doug McDaniel.
Yeah.
I think there's some truth to both sides of this point. I think part of it is they do have some guys that are. Max Jones looked worn down. I don't. I still think he can be a solid player if he comes back next year.
He was totally out of it.
He looked yes, completely on E. So I think there is some of that to this. At the same time, good teams, when you get to this point in the year, a lot of the rotations are basically 7 players. So
yeah, that's
just sort of how it is. And you just got to be better. The bottom line is they're not good enough. They weren't good enough, and it's got to be better.
Did the new parts of this team embrace that stuff in the offseason as well as they could? Because the only guy, and I know people are going to say, well, he only played 17 minutes last night. The only guy that didn't look worn down in this last month is David Gasson. He was still playing at a top speed.
And he's a
Yeah.
warrior.
It's not just because he was only played 17 minutes last night. I'm talking about like the entire season.
Yeah.
He never looked gassed.
because that's a program guy that understands the culture and
Right.
is
So,
bought in.
so you wonder about if this was an off-season buy-in issue then.
Yeah, it very well could have been. But I mean, just to that point, the bench points tonight, DY 27-4. It was 17-0 at half. Bench points.
Because I just think is like if David Gasson was completely fine and he played more minutes than anyone most nights.
Well, he did play only 17 last night, but that doesn't distract from your point. I mean, he's
He's
been a
playing
warrior every
37
game.
plus
Yeah.
every night.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Like David Gasson is really the counter to the
And did he
The
ever
minutes
get
thing.
tired
No.
the last 2 months?
No. And then you put Ani Enzo on the court tonight in the first half, and he's so bad defensively and rebounding that they had to yank him and never play him again. And we've seen that all year.
yeah.
So
And Cole, I mean, to be honest, you say David Gasson's a guy who understands the culture. What culture is there to understand? What is the culture of the program? I don't know.
And if you talking like that's fine, but then don't you worry about next year? Because who's the guy that next
well,
year?
yeah, of course I worry because, I mean, we talked about it at the Iowa State game. Like you just mentioned, they're losing the two guys they run their offense through. I mean, aside from Doug, they run their offense through, they facilitate it through Coleman Hawkins, and David Gasson cuts and understands that. And those are the two cogs out of the three, and they're gone.
And Doug, we talked about concerns about him with the offseason. Like that's not a guy that right now is screaming culture guy. So
That's why you got to bring.
he's at fairness. He's been better, but we'll see. It's hard to trust.
I think you got to bring in some guys with some leadership characteristics and intangibles as well. Not only good players, but guys that you've spoken to enough people. By talking to people, they're going to buy in. They're going to lead the culture. They're going to lead by example. I think that's going to be a critical component as well this offseason. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else.
I think we got a friend that probably wants to watch some KU basketball, actually.
Yeah, well, and look, we'll have plenty of time to sit down from the comfort of our own homes and do more shows where we're talking about all this stuff. And we did a lot of this the other day after the game in Bramlage. My message going into the offseason is going to be, I think so much of this is about how humble are these guys going to be? Did this season really legitimately humble these guys in a way that can be really productive? I don't mean like, you have to get humbled in the sense of like you're getting totally knocked down and beaten down, but it should be that to the point where you can kind of realize the error of some of your ways and get it turned around. And you have to have a level of humility to do that and say, hey, like we really screwed up. And I don't, there are a lot of things we'll see. We'll see what happens this offseason, man. I mean, Oklahoma State went through it like in football this year, and Mike Gundy donated a bunch of his own money to like their NIL collective. I mean, you've seen some coaches try and do things like that to, if you're talking about trying to win fan support, I think things like that can help. We'll see if there are going to be any staff changes. Obviously, the portal. That's what I will be looking for the most. Like, how much can this staff humble itself and make changes that need to be made? So that's my speaking my final piece here on the season. What a season it was. What a season. Poor Spencer Bain, I think it was, that had to say that at the senior night speech the other day at Bramlage. What a season.
We're going to have a lot of portal coverage, though. That's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, but I'm not excited about it. That's the thing. I'm not excited about it. I'm not letting that burn me again. And I'm also not going to melt down too much about it because I said this the other day. We thought Missouri's class sucked, and it wound up being really good. So I'm just going to observe.
Yeah.
I won't get too high or too low. It's not going to be a roller coaster like last year, I don't think.
That's fair. We'll just have lots of portal coverage on the pod.
We say that, but we'll probably melt down and get super excited still. It's the way it goes.
I'm going to hold me to this, everybody. Hold me to this. I'm going to be steady Eddie through the portal.
We're not going to have a K-Lift battle meltdown type.
If we do,
Who?
that means
He's
this
moved on.
off season's not going well.
Yeah, we don't need any one of those. So
Yeah.
Nick says that I definitely will either way, which is accurate.
Totally accurate. We know what's going to happen. That'll happen. Cole will predict K-State to win 11 football games a year. Like that's, like
Big 12
clockwork.
championship.
That's my role, guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm calling Big 12 championship this year. Football.
Okay. I'm not there yet. We'll see what happens the rest of the offseason.
All right, you heard it here.
Hey, how about Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson and DJ Payne, all those guys running 23 miles an hour, folks.
You didn't know who the fourth guy was.
Yeah, you didn't.
Donovan McIntosh.
Oh, I thought you were wondering who Donnie Mack was in the text. So,
No, I know Donovan McIntosh.
6'3" corner
Thank
running
you.
23 miles per hour.
Yeah, boy, he looks,
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have some football coverage coming you guys' way as well.
There we go. Football. All right. Live from the Big 12 basketball tournament. This is 3 Mile. We're signing off for Nick Springer behind the scenes, for Cole, for Derek. Thank you for listening to another basketball season of 3 Mile. We'll talk to you soon.